Feel Good Talk, focused on mind, body, soul, and business. You are now tuning into Let's Talk About It with your girl Izzy Meditates and your girl Kendra Moore. Hello.
What's up? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, little Friday. I'm excited.
Me too.
Today we have a very, very, very special guest. We go way back. It's Dr. Jabari Whitehead. He is an educator, he's a principal, and he is also a huge positive influence within our community. We are so excited to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for having me. Oh, yes, we go way back.
Yes, way back.
Way back when I had hair.
That's right. You did have hair then. It seems like yesterday. I look at our yearbook and I'm like, oh my goodness. I can't believe
I had high top. I had the little.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. That is hilarious. So how's everybody's week going? We'll start with you, Jabari.
Everything's going well. We're nearing another week of school, closing out another week of school. The children are learning, teachers are managing every day. And obviously, I'm blessed with my family and everyone's healthy and we're doing well. I'm here. I'm loved. I'm blessed. I'm doing good. In this moment, I'm well. It's good.
Awesome to have you. How about you, Miss Kitty Kendra?
I'm good. The moving in process is still going. I am cleaned out a bunch of boxes and I'm so excited that my house is starting to take what do you call it? On a persona, you know what I mean? So as I set things up now, so I'm excited about that. I want to say happy anniversary to my parents. So last weekend was my dad's 50th birthday. This weekend, they are out to dinner celebrating their 49th wedding anniversary.
That's very awesome.
Yeah. So,
tell them I said congratulations.
Definitely.
I will for sure. So yeah, so that's like Jabari said, that's a blessing in and of itself to have both parents here and they're kicking it right now. So I'm excited about that.
I love that. I'll keep it short. It was a busy week as always. I've been trying to be more visual because that was my intention in the beginning of the new year. So I've been trying to post more videos and be more present with my followers and audience. And so I've been busy doing a lot of content. So the week has flown by. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's Thursday already.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to have Jabari here, Dr. Jabari Whitehead. And so I'd like for you to introduce yourself to our Feel Good Talk family and let them know everything about you before I spill the beans.
Well, it's funny because usually in the past we go through these introductions and it's about your position and what you do in life and just the ego profiles, I call it. But really, I'm a father first and foremost, husband, a mess in a masterpiece, still trying to figure this world out. Just living every day to add value to the lives of people I interact with. I'm a native of Chester, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. But since then, I've been on this journey through my education, a proud Cheney University alumni. Also did my doctoral work and master's at St. Joseph University in educational leadership. I've been pretty much on this journey to continue to learn more about myself, to be a better person every day, to live for my family and to show up for them and to show up for everyone I interact with. So it's still a process I'm growing into. Definitely my children are teaching me more and more about myself, how uncool I am, how corny I am. And also I'm just finding more ways to serve. And again, I'm just excited to be here.
Yeah, that is very awesome. Kendra, did you want to go?
No, yeah. So what I wanted to talk about first, so tell us a little bit about your journey through leadership, because I find that fascinating. Just starting from the beginning to where you are today. Just as context before we get into the deep questions.
Sure. I think the journey with leadership really started early. I have my father is a very strong figure in my life. Obviously, I grew up in Chester, going to church 9 times a week, and so that played a very heavy influence on the understanding of the kind of man I need to become. Particularly growing up in the neighborhood we grew up in, I lived on a third of Pendle, third Lamoken, in Chester for the majority of my life is where I grew up at, and we, very much from that time we couldn't afford to be a follower. It's always about being a leader, just because of for safety purposes, for understanding of who we're called to be as a family and expectations in our home. And so between opportunities to serve at church and being, that was just part of what we did, whether I was a Sunday school teacher or had been a camp counselor um, at church or at the local YMCA at the time. Those were all opportunities I had as far as leadership goes very early on in life. And then obviously with sports, with being football, wrestling, track and field, baseball, and having those opportunities to lead. Later on, after college, I had an opportunity to coach young children at the middle school level, at the high school levels, coaching football. I coached at Garner Valley High School, to coach at Pinecrest for a period of time. And again, been around some great mentors that showed me the way in terms of what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a quality young man, and really understanding who I need to become. I was also part of a fellowship of Christian athletes at one point, and as a matter of fact, one of the neighbors that Izzy grew up nearby, Mr. Young, Bob Young, was one of the people as a fellowship of Christian athletes coach that gave the opportunity to do some speaking engagements with at men's breakfasts, as being a camp counselor during the summertime, and now that led me into my role in wanting to be an educator after coaching, and I ended up getting my elementary education degree at Chain University, as I stated earlier, and ultimately I was able to get involved in opportunities to be involved in education leadership. And I would tell you the truth, when I was looking for teaching jobs, the only thing I wanted to do was coach football, teach sixth grade social studies or middle school social studies, and coach. That was what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
My very first interview for a teaching position, the principal on the other side of the table said to me, "I need you to replace me someday." He was African American principal in a predominantly suburban school district in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where I taught fourth grade at. And that was the very first time, and I didn't even step foot in the classroom yet. So that was a mentor for me, Dr. Chapman. He was a mentor in my life right from the start, and that was the push. I said, "Well, okay, this is what it's going to be." So I started teaching, but I always knew at some point that I was called to be involved in leadership.
Wow. So I have another question to follow up with that. So you went, like you talked about your childhood and those opportunities. And then I'm thinking, like, when you transition into coaching, that's like a whole different thing. Like, what was it that made you want to coach, or what qualities did you see in yourself that you thought you could kind of bring forth to other people? Because it sounds like that was kind of a fairly young age too.
Yeah, I did start coaching pretty early. I think that it was an opportunity to give back. There was always some kind of coach or a mentor in my life, whether through church, whether through Chester Youth Baseball at one point, whether it's my wrestling in high school. I went to Ridley and wrestled for a historic wrestling coach there, and played football there with some pretty strong coaches. And it was just that idea that you can make an impact by being in that position, to have all eyes on you and all ears on you. That's a very vulnerable position to be in, and a very powerful position to be in. And so from that point, I think I ended up needing mentors as a young man, uh, and I started coaching because one of the coaches at Garner Valley, Mike Ricky, who just retired, he was a long-time coach at Garner Valley High School. I offered opportunity to coach there after being around, because I moved to the area after college, but I was in that area and I started coaching because I was kind of helping out some kids at the track and in the weight room there. And then he approached me and we talked about coaching, and he was just a really strong figure himself. And at that point, I started to see myself as teacher and coach because it was another person who believed in me and started to see these things in me. So it was an opportunity to take that and see if I could make an impact. And again, like I said, my father was a constant influence in terms of leading and coaching and always teaching. I remember my dad used to come home with drug and alcohol videos and make everybody in the room sit down and watch it. Wherever he was reading, wherever he was into, was constantly teach it, teach it, teach it, teach it. Being out, handing out, like again with the church, handing out tracts or pamphlets, going door to door, doing in the fairgrounds. It was opportunity to teach and serve. So it was always there. But to go back and coach, it was just, I felt like it was a gift to be around young people and to communicate and help them see things within themselves that they may not recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mr. Bob Young was just he was a neighbor of mine, and he was just super awesome with once he took you under his wing, it was just like he always was a teacher, an inspiration. Literally, I was grown, moved to Virginia, and he made sure that I got a book on, living on my own and all these positive books and things like that. So just to have him as a mentor is a super blessing. Yeah. I like that. So my first question to you is, how does one add value? And we're kind of going off the leadership. How does one add value to the community, um, to anything in our community? And in doing so, does leadership play a part in that?
The first part about leadership is listening.
Mm-hmm.
Many times you go into a situation, if you let your ego lead you, you go into a situation believing you're the savior, that you're going to come in and fix everything.
Right.
But you can't, I've said this before, you can't serve your people if you don't know your people. And I think that when you listen to the people and hear their story, and if you view everyone as a story and expect to be in awe and gain from that, then you have a context and understand where to meet them at. You want to meet them where they are, and listen to them, and then you get able to add value to who they are. You get a chance to understand, is there a story they're telling themselves about themselves? Is it a negative story, or do they have the petty tyrant or the governor that's providing that self doubt every day? And again, we all have self doubt, but one of the things I do each day to as a point of adding value to the lives of others, to leadership, we walk in the door in the morning as a leader. I'll go for the view of a principal for my role. We walk in the door in the morning. From the time your foot steps through those doors, you're held accountable. You're held accountable for your tone. You're held accountable for the way you walk, your posture, your voice, looking people in the eye. When you say good morning, are you standing still to listen to the response? We say, how are you doing? Is that just something you say, or do you stand there to listen and to be present with that person? That goes a long way. If you go to your office or you go around your building, you're not paying attention to the signals that people are giving you, you can't add value. If you're paying attention to the fact that a faculty member or a teacher or your custodian struggle or is not feeling well or had an argument or is animated about something while they're on their phone in their car before they walk in the door, or they look out of sorts, then you're not going to be able to make an impact or a difference or work with that person because you don't know them. You're going on and just kind of going through emotions of management is not really true leadership. But again, to add value, you have to shut your mouth and listen first.
Yeah. And I like hearing you say that. I think of being in the moment. Like, in order to be a good leader and to add value, you have to be in the moment. Like, we were just talking a few minutes ago, and we were like, well, if you can just send the link out a little bit, you're like, no, my phone is over there because I am in the moment. This is where I am right now. And to do that and to be a good leader, you have to be in that moment. And when you're in that moment, you're able to see things that are going wrong or things that are going right within the school, with the teachers, with students, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I adopted. There's this phrase. Well, you heard. I know. Adopted a phrase a while ago. Be brave, not perfect. And
Right.
that's not mine. It's from Brene Brown's work.
Yeah.
And when you come in and realize that everybody can contribute, everybody has value when they come to work. Everyone wants to do their best, and their best for that day might not be what you judge it to be. So that's why you have to stay out of judgment. And when you're present, you're able to be in tune and intuitive about the people's pattern of behavior, their response patterns,
Right.
and you know that they're giving their best, but it's up to you to provide the framework and the guardrails so they can feel free. And honestly, I did my doctoral research in transformational leadership, which in that is usually a default to trust. Transactional is usually punishment and reward. Transformational basically has four components. It's your mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, and then that um, somatic, social emotional state, the physiological state, and how somebody's really feeling. So if you're paying attention to those pieces and your engagement with people, that is what really makes a difference.
Wow.
And I had heard from one of your previous interviews, you talked about how you had to like grow to come to this point through the, you know, I would say negative, but let's say opportunities for self realization, and that you took advantage. Can you talk a little bit about, give us an example of, one of those situations where you had to self reflect to help you get to this point where you are today?
Well, I would say give you a story about a moment that almost put me in a bad health situation. So I was in my second year of my doctoral program. In that year, as a professional, it was a great year of accolades, recognitions for the work I was doing as an educator. I was on the news for a reading incentive program we did at school. We broke ground on a garden for the students, for the community. It was great work on the surface. However, at the same time, I was out front leading, but I wasn't bringing my people with me. See, I had tunnel vision because all these things were what is right for kids, which is we never want to forget that. But I had a group of people to be accountable for, and I wasn't the best listener. It was about ambition. I think part of it was imposter syndrome, where it was that constantly trying to prove to myself that I belong here, and constantly overcoming that. But it was got to a dangerous point. I ended up in the hospital in a cardiac unit as a person who I was doing my doctoral work. I was a father. I'm still a father, but I was a parent at the time still, and I was received all the accolades. And I was at work one day and ended up having to be at the hospital and taken to the cardiac unit because of a matter with my heart that I didn't know about. But it was the stress. It was um, the the drive and ambition without any kind of life balance. Now there were times where I would do a host an event at work at school as a principal, and it would be a family event for the community. That event might end at 9 or wrap around 10 o'clock. I would literally stay overnight in my building right through the morning so I could work on my dissertation and get work done while my family was at home, so I wouldn't disrupt the next day. So that was an awakening. Being on the cardiac unit, having wires and tubes on my body, and seeing my wife upset and in tears. And I'm telling you, she's pretty tough. I rarely ever see her get too much Wednesday outside of our children. And my daughter at the time did not want to come up on the bed and come see me because all the wires.
Yeah.
But I finally coaxed her up there, and that was a moment where I realized that it's time to make a shift. It's time to do the inner work, to go inside and do some unlearning about myself, really understand who I am. Because mostly what I was doing is living up to an identity that I thought I had to hold and protect that and have that armor on. And but it took that moment, and also at the same time, even when I was at one point I was shifting, looking for another job opportunity, and my leadership style during that time led an individual a teacher that worked with me it was an unethical decision, but it wound up where I did not get the opportunity that I was looking to get because of some negative communication that occurred. And I'm at the point in my life now where I look at things that happen; those things happen for me instead of to me. But I think that at that point, moving forward, no matter what the greatest intentions might be, when you're doing it without the people that you're serving, it's not about stewardship; it's about ego. And it was time to put the ego down and make a shift to become a better version of myself.
Wow. I just want to say real quick, because, you're talking in this, I think this resonates even if you don't consider yourself to be in a leadership position, work career-wise. I think about a lot of people who are working two jobs, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to get, this and that, even people who may be neglecting their family or their own health to volunteer for this and that, to kind of be in front, and kind of masking it as I'm serving the community or serving the church or serving the this and that. So I think, the takeaway is, regardless of if you are in a professional leadership position, that we all have to be mindful of how we spend our time. And to your point, how, where is that being birthed from? Is it being birthed from a place of ego, or really a place of, wanting to serve other people and making sure that we take time out for ourselves and for our family? Because at the end of the day, something happens to us and then we will be replaced. Even though we think we're irreplaceable, but they will find someone to fill the slot. So, But anyway, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, a good quote that I've adopted over time was that everybody's hero is somebody else's villain. Right. So it kind of keeps you humble in a sense that at some point that you may not have showed up as your best self for someone at some point. So it kind of keeps you humble and looking to constantly continue to improve.
It's in that shift. It's in that shift where the true self comes out. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we just have to hit rock bottom because we're so busy running on ego. I went through the same thing, and I tell all the time, I work for a tech company. And when I became pregnant with Cass, I was like, I'm going to be the boss mom. Like, I'm going to be the best mom. She's going to know that I work for this corporate company, and I'm going to reach the highest point. I literally was working from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, no sleep. And while I was working, I was actually earning certification so I could get higher in the company. And then she would wake up around 8, and from 8 to whatever time she napped at 12, I would be up with her. I drop my son off to school. I come back, sleep 2 hours. I was getting 2 hours a day of sleep for almost a year and a half. And my body was like, no. In the same position that you were, not so much with the cardio, but I became overweight. I got really sick. I was having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, couldn't sleep. Sometimes I could. And then the company laid me off. And it was just like, like now I can't. It was the ego that kept me going, working all these hours and pushing myself, and I was there for everyone. I was there for my family. I still was there for, my job and for church and everything else. But I was running on E, like constantly, but my ego kept me going. And then it was like, woof, just shut you down really quick. But in that point, I found my best self. And I feel like it turned everything around and changed a lot for me. So I feel that everything that you're saying. Yeah.
I had a similar thing too that I always talk about with me transitioning to Florida, but the last 5 years of the company I worked for previously, and I was there for 20 something years, was so stressful. And I am I'm happy go lucky, really don't stress out that much, water off my back. But the last 2 of those 5 years were so challenging. And then I found myself being in the middle of conversations with people and having to consciously take a deep breath, and then having chest, just kind of I could just feel the tightness in my chest. And I was like, I am out. I will take I took a huge pay decrease to where I am now. And I don't regret that decision at all, because some things are greater than money. And I wanted to, one, be here alive for my son, but I was finding too, I didn't have time for him, after I got off work, because I was so mentally exhausted, and I didn't have time for a lot of things. So I think all of us have probably experienced some variation of that. And hopefully, if you're watching and you're still going through it, this is a wake up call.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say add to that sometimes we get so much messaging from society.
Right.
Everything, if you watch commercials, if you watch social media or listen, everything is to make you feel inadequate about yourself.
Right.
Whether it's the clothing, or whether it's the car, or whether it's the next new pill. Everything is meant to make you feel inadequate about yourself. And honestly, I adopted a habit of asking my own children, the name. Quite often, I ask them to name 3 things they love about themselves. And they have to do it quick.
Right.
We always want them to be able to name at least 3 things they love about themselves, so they can set their own compass and not seek or worry about the external validation, because it's such a dangerous place to be in. And we're also taught this illusion of control, and that things are permanent. So, the only thing, there's 5 things, and this is why I help. We talk about adding value to our staff and our community. There's 5 things that we talk about. I try to remind our community and everyone that we have control over, and it's sleep, nutrition, um, exercise and movement, relationships, and mindset.
Nice.
So we have control over those 5 areas. And actually, my staff, my teachers, the faculty, staff, we started this year a monthly health self-assessment, to where they take an anonymous survey, and it allows me to gauge where our staff is. Anything that comes up out of a scale of 1 to 10, if anything that's below an 8, that's a warning shot to now do a work in that particular area. So if your sleep is like at a 4, or your nutrition is at a 6 or a 2, because you mentioned earlier, Kendra, about people who are not in leadership position. Every single position matters. If we didn't learn anything from COVID these times, that whole idea of essential workers, that every single position matters, that whoever you're bringing through these doors each day, you can't turn it on and off. If you haven't taken control, or if you haven't worked on those things within your control, within your reason choice, then you're going to struggle. You're going to constantly feel that pain and suffering that you don't have to. But if you focus on what is within our control, those 5 pieces, then it gives you a touchstone, a place to be grounded in.
Yeah, and I think even in that grounding, if you focus on those things and you're able to achieve those things, guess what? You are a leader, because you are an example. Now other people can look to you and say, oh, why do they seem, so I always hate the word balance, because I really don't think that there is balance. But, why do they, just seem a certain presence where you can take on things, or things don't bother you as much, or you can make decisions, more efficiently or effectively. So no matter what level your position is, I think you still have that opportunity, just in the way that you show up, So that's awesome.
We are going to head to comments. I see we have a lot of them already. Charles Brakely says, "Good evening, everyone." Hello, Charles. How are you?
Charles.
Kathy M. Johnson says, "Hello, good evening, everyone." Hi, Kathy. Thank you for tuning in. We have Shayna Gordine. Good evening, everyone. Hi, Shayna. Feel Good Talk family. Thank you for tuning in. We have Fatima West. Key. You can't serve the people if you don't know the people. Absolutely. Listening and connecting. I like what he's saying. Leaders are servants to and of the people. That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
In every aspect. Fatima West also says, "Be brave, not perfect." September Rain says, "Good evening, FGT. How are y'all doing this evening?" We are good. Thank you for tuning in. Charles Brakely says, "Stress, one of the silent killers." Yes.
Probably the biggest
Absolutely. Tyrone Ricks is in the house. 10 of Life. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Tyrone. Tyrone Ricks says, "Good evening, Izzy Meditates, Kendra Moore, and special guest, Dr. Jabari."
Good evening.
He also says, I love Feel Good Talk. We love you too,
We love
Tyrone.
you.
Tyrone is the link that links everyone together. Karen Dixon Brown says, good evening. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in.
So I want to talk about that stress. I heard about stress as a silent killer.
Yeah.
Can we touch on that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes.
Oh, we have one more. Let's see. Karen Dixon Brown says, yes, I do. The 3 questions also with family and clients. Great point.
All right, let's go to the stress.
Yeah. So I think stress there is stress doesn't go anywhere, right? Stress is here. It's our response to stress. It's what we do, and we decide what is good stress. For example, putting yourself willingly, and you talk about leadership, we take opportunity to willingly put yourself in uncomfortable situations, to go through discomfort. You have a great chance of coming out stronger on the other side. So you choose the stress, like of the 5 things we have within our control, like exercise. When you're waking up in the morning, by myself, I get up 3:45 a.m., 4 o'clock, 5 days a week, and I usually wake up and then force myself back to sleep a little bit. On weekends, I might sleep it a little bit, but usually it's throughout the course of the week. You wake up and you Eric Thomas from NET constantly it talks about starting your day before starting your day. So not just falling into it, but waking up in the morning, getting to a practice of journaling, and meditating, and then going into the physical work. And we all know, as far as exercise, there's plenty of research that talks about what it does for your body and the stress that you put yourself through. One of the workouts I do remember, it was a situation where I do CrossFit, I belong to a CrossFit gym. And one of the workouts was to carry a 135-pound loaded barbell and walk 1 mile with that barbell on your back. And obviously, there are times to put it down, to lift it back up, and do it again. But the lesson in that moment was about not pushing your happiness over the horizon. In that discomfort, you have to become happy where you are within that, and adapt to the stress, and take it and take joy and pride in the journey and the lessons within that stress. Knowing what's on the other side is only going to make you stronger.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, that's powerful because we do have this thing in our society where we don't want any stress, we don't want any disappointment, we don't want any, we do everything to be like convenient. But you're absolutely right. Stress is something that it's more so we need to learn how to manage it, not necessarily avoid it because it's just gonna happen.
Right.
Yeah, my children, there are times, and we talk about that. Again, my children are 12 and 10. And there's times when I know that they're snuggled up and comfortable, that I'll actually have them, go do a workout, go do something that I know they don't want to do. And it was tough for them in the beginning, but our conversation is, if you can do it when you don't really want to do it, that's just going to make you stronger. Anybody can do it when they want to, when you're feeling good about yourself, when you have everything going well. But
Right.
Can you show up? Can you show up when there's so much uncertainty and still stand and do the work, stand and work and adjust to what the work is?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. We have more comments. So we have a lot of comments today. Charles Brinkley says, yes, get out of your health no matter how much they're paying. It's the truth.
I know, but I do miss that bonus check. I ain't gonna lie, but okay. I heard from one of my colleagues. He was like, Kendra, I didn't want to tell you about the bonus. I'm like,
I know, right? It's hard when you make a transition like that. I had something similar. Fatima West says, I hear you. The last physician literally sent me to the ER from my desk. The physician said, you need to go to the hospital right now. And I'm calling the ambulance. I was hot. I am the director. My BP was out of this world. I was diagnosed with blood pressure surge. Is that right? Sounds crazy. No sleep, no eating, working all 3 shifts, caffeinated drinks. I'm telling you. And this was about a month after I fell on my face at home. I got up and blood pressure dropped. I was thinking I could have had a stroke. It's true. Especially in the field that you're in. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have. I listen to Oprah's Super Soul Conversations,
Yeah.
and quite often when one episode talked about the whispers we hear.
Right.
We wait till we get knocked down with a sledgehammer, but along the way, there's small signs. Like Fatima was saying, there's probably signs along the way too, but because of what our fears are about not showing up, about being inadequate, a lot of times that drives us just to ignore that and keep going.
Yeah.
And we know that our children will never know what kind of employees we are, but they will know what kind of parent we are.
Right. Yeah. Charles Brinkley says, "Do what you hate doing, like you love it." Yeah, it's the truth.
It's like burpees.
David Goggins says stuff like that. I love David Goggins.
Yeah.
Fatima West says, "I love Super Soul Sundays." Yeah, they're my favorite too. I
Wow.
went I went through something similar to that when I first moved here. I felt like I had to prove to my parents that I could make it on my own by myself, and so I worked two jobs, and it was constantly working. And then one day I went to lay down, and my eyes I couldn't shut my eyes, like literally they wouldn't shut for anything. I just could not sleep. So I ended up going to the doctors, and he was saying that I had like a general like a panic attack or whatever because I was working over 65 hours a week trying to go to college at the same time. You know what I mean? And so, like you said, it's just pushing yourself to that point. And it could be healthy if we do it in the right way. But to literally work like
Yeah.
all these shifts, and like she said, excuse me, the caffeine, not eating properly. We were getting like all these different types of food from different representatives that were bringing us all kinds of junk and, fast food. It all contributes to that. But if we could do it in a healthy way and with purpose, then I think that we would be fine.
So,
Yeah.
Dr. Jabari, one of the things along this topic you talked about, I heard you talk about before, is like unlearning. You mentioned that earlier. So, we're talking about all of these bad things. Can you talk about the importance of unlearning when it comes to leadership and how you grow from that?
Sure. Unlearning again, the most difficult leadership is leadership of self. It is the most difficult piece because you can't give what you don't have. If you can't lead yourself, how can you go lead the people at your building, at your job, at your in the field? You can't do it. So we get so caught up on the learning about other people, how to be in charge. But going back to like the unlearning, it goes back to understanding why you had this belief system to begin with. So John Locke mentions the Latin phrase tabula rasa, which is the idea of blank slate. So it's the idea that you come into this world and then your environment begins to imprint on you. However, it happens so quickly, it doesn't feel like a blank slate, right? You come into this world, the epigenetics, your environment that you're into, the neighborhood that you live in, the noise in your home, even within the womb before you even arise. That's why reading to your child even before they're born, or having that calm environment plays a large part into their temperament when they arrive. And then so we learn and also think about the messaging we get around ourselves as Black people, people of color, where the idea of you had to work 2, 3, 4 times as hard as your white counterparts. While again, while there's a need to understand that, after you understand it, you heard that, it can then become a crutch if you don't find a way to move beyond that, to find a way to respond, to find your way forward, because that becomes a point of suffering and victimhood, and that's not what we're here for. When we had so many ancestors come before us that went through so much more, so we get that message. You had to unlearn that, and then we also had to learn about our self worth, and in terms of are we worthy of love, and radical self love, regardless of what what the world may be telling us. So you have to unlearn that. We have to unlearn the messaging from our parents, and because of their fears. Look, my I got my behind whooped quite a lot, and I think part of it was just fear of keeping me out of some dangerous situations in the neighborhood and the community. And I think over time, I know my family evolved, and I saw my father evolve with my two siblings. So he learned, my father learned and grew as a man, and that taught me how important it is to evolve as a man. But um, and with me being in terms of leadership, it's not about being demanding or being hard and putting fear in place or being intimidating, because that can work against you, because fear and intimidation is short lived. That's short. You can then be betrayed. You don't have favor. You don't have grace with those people if you're trying to put fear in their lives to do what you call them, what you're trying to call them to do. So it's about learning to love first, to put the love in front of fear, for service. Because again, we're not taught this. We're also not taught to be vulnerable. I mentioned earlier, I grew up at third and Pennell, third and Lamoken. There's a lot of people in my community. I don't have any childhood friends. I don't have anybody from my childhood, from elementary school. I don't have anybody that I am really like close with today from that time period, because unfortunately they weren't fortunate enough to have the same kind of family structure I had. And my parents are, it was somewhat of a miracle, the fact that we were, they succumbed to the things that unfortunately some of my contemporaries did, where we were. So, but we, in that environment, we couldn't afford to show emotion. We couldn't afford to show some of our interests. The fact that being the gifted or being the smart kid, or having a rock collection, celebrate your rock collection as young, being an artist. So when my contemporaries, by the time they're 12 years old, are flashing knots of money on the street, like, well, I'm a good student, but you're not rocking this. Not being able to have the material things of the fresh starter jacket, the new Jordans. So it was really about unlearning and pulling off that armor, because that armor was worn for a very long time. That warrior, I heard Jada Pinkett Smith mention at one point about she had to learn to put the warrior down, over time, and we need it, but you had to learn to put it down. So, how that translate to leadership? It wasn't until I do believe that the power of vulnerability, TED Talk from Brene Brown, that kind of met me at my crossroads with that critical moment of health, for me, and what was going on in my life just wasn't aligning. Definitely played a large part. And then Liz Wiseman, she wrote in the Harvard Business Review an article about multipliers and diminishers. And leadership, we want to be multipliers. Our ego can allow us to diminish people, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But the idea of being a multiplier with every single interaction you have, because Kendra, you mentioned about, we are all teachers, whether we want to be or not, through our example. We don't have a choice. We're all teachers. So I think unlearning more and more. And I'm still unlearning, and I'm still getting over my fears. I'm still unlearning some things that I sound stupid as, when it comes to parenting, things that don't make sense. And I have two children who let me know when things don't make sense. And my daughter has great facial expression that she can also make you feel like you don't exist when you say something stupid. So yeah, and so I have a lot of critics at home and people who keep me grounded as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot of unlearning.
And then also blind spots. You have to
Yeah.
have people in your world at work. You have to have teachers, paraprofessionals, your custodian, your colleagues who you allowed to tell you what you're missing. You can't know everything. You have to have that. If you don't believe you have blind spots, then you're not a leader. You're not ready for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I totally love my parents to death. And they worked so hard for me, and they've been together for years since they were like in middle school. But there's some things that I had to unlearn, and it wasn't so much of an unlearning. It's just like, so I noticed, like, when I tried to parent, they're like, "Why are you parenting that way? Why are you using this kind of bottle when you should use this?" You know what I mean? Like, we're kind of stuck in that kind of environment where we had to kind of do everything the same. And when you didn't fall into that, it was a little, it was tough. You had to unlearn, like Jabari said. My parents weren't into buying all the name brand things, so I didn't have those. So to go to school and not have those, have that nice, what is it, like a goose down jacket. I don't think I've ever owned one. I would have loved to have one, but my parents were like, you don't need a goose down. You're fine. Let's just get this Kmart jacket or whatever. And they would save the money. Now I appreciate it as a child. They would save the money for experiences because then we would go on these nice vacations like every summer. You know what I mean? So, but there's a lot of unlearning to do. And like you said, it doesn't end and it may never end.
But I also want to add that I mean, obviously, there's plenty that we know that our parents. I don't want to paint the picture, obviously, that our parents didn't,
Right.
give so much to us because it's all about finding out what works for you. Like what conversation I have about my kids. I tell my daughter the other day that I've never been a 12-year-old girl, so I don't know. And my son, and I
Right.
said I may have been a boy before, but I've never been a 10-year-old boy in 2020, 22,
Right.
and with the stimulus that he has. So it's a whole different environment. And when we open ourselves up to that kind of learning and unlearning, then we're able to move forward. And Adam Grant wrote a great book called Think Again. It's just the joy of not knowing, and that just going through that. The more I read that, it helped me understand that there's just so much more to grow and learn from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say two things real quick. I remember at a leadership conference thing that I went to, and it was, they didn't phrase it as unlearning, but it is unlearning. But they were talking about why is it so hard for us to maybe get through to our managers? A lot of times we complain like, oh, our managers at work or our leaders at work, they just do the same thing over and over, no matter what we tell them, and yada yada. And the person explained that you have to understand that people in leadership, they have been taught a certain thing. And they have all this experience, which is why they're leaders. But when you come with something new, you're literally asking them to take out, he was like, imagine their brain like a box. You're asking them to take out what they've packed in that box, set it aside, and then pick up what you're saying and put it in that box. And he was like, it's just a hard transition. And ever since then, so he was talking about, having grace with our leaders when we're, trying to convince them of ideas and, giving them time to process stuff. So that's what was running through my head when you were talking about the unlearning as well. So, and I think that's all of us. We picked up so many habits and it takes effort. And like you said, Jabari, before, Dr. Brene Brown, that vulnerability and, being brave, not perfect, and surrounding yourself with people who have the strengths where your weaknesses are. Because I think a lot of times, too, we think that we should know everything. And it's like, it's okay if you don't know everything. Surround yourself with people who know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And feed off of each other. So,
yeah, because I'm very big picture oriented. I tend to do backwards mapping. And for people who work with me, that's not always a good thing because I can see the big picture, but I might be missing some details. So knowing that there's certain things that I'm not great at, I'll go to my team and I'll just say, what am I missing? I know I messed up somewhere.
Right.
And I just assume there was a misstep that even no matter what plan I come up with, no matter what I'm doing, when I'm in my school leadership team meeting, my final question, I always want to know, what am I missing? Now, if your team is silent, you have a problem. You ask that question, your team is silent, then you're in the wrong space. You haven't gained their trust. But I don't have that. I haven't found that I have a silent group. So we're in a good spot right now, and I love to keep that going.
Awesome.
We're gonna. I was gonna say we're gonna head to comments, but I wanted to ask you this question, and maybe you can keep it in thought. So I know we are born to love, and we have to unlearn some things. But I wanted to ask you: do you feel that it is in our nature, or are we born with the ability or that thing to want to add value? So I want you to just keep that in thought. But we're going to take a few comments. We've got a lot of comments. Fatima West says fear of judgment, pressure to perform, perfectionism, ego, etc. Yes, ma'am. Charles Brakely says you were definitely burned out not being able to show. Charles, I will tell you that story. That I'm not even joking. Karen Dixon Brown says health is critical, especially when you think overworking and accomplishing that makes all okay. Once my body shut down, that I couldn't stand straight, only to find all levels below level iron, oh my goodness, calcium, vitamin D, etc. The ER was surprised I was even able to drive myself to the hospital without passing out. Truly, I find balance now. Yeah, Karen is like my twin. We are like boom, boom, boom. We got to get this done. Bam, bam. And it's constant moving all the time. So I'm glad that you're okay. Fatima West says, "Wow, unlearning is a deep self-reflection of self, acknowledging the truth of ourselves and readjusting and learning new ways. The messaging is so in doctrine. Exactly. I was the only representation of diversity within my company. It's heavy weight to carry to be representation of a whole race and culture. Absolutely. I feel like I've been like that pretty much all my life, and it is a tough place to be in. Um, and especially try to carry the workload, family load, and everything else. Karen Dixon Brown says, over the 25 years, I've unlearned a lot. So needed. Yes. She also says, I thank God I'm a leader who thinks outside the box because I have been under or around some who just focus on the 40 hours they work, 40-hour work week and never the mission, cause, or need of the job. It's easy to fall into that, Karen. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I think that we fall into that. At one point it was like, I think I talked about it before. There was that terminology maybe about 5 years ago. All you saw on my post was boss babe. I'm a boss mom. I'm a boss this. I work these hours. I get this. And it was like me cheesing, and I got this, and then I realized I was like, dude, I can't have my house perfect every time somebody comes over and do school and do that. But that's what I thought I had to be. I was in a clique that thought they had to be that, and we just fed each other that fire every day. Girl, you boss. We got pink, we got diamonds and bling. And then I was just that got tiresome after a while. It was tiresome. But to the question of adding value, do you think we're born with that? Is that something that's in us that's like just dying to come out?
We talk about going outside into nature, getting outdoors,
Right.
as if we're not part of nature, as if
Right.
we elevate ourselves, even though we're mammals, we're humans, we're a species, and we're social creatures.
Right.
If this past pandemic, we can't take away the lesson of interdependence and the need, that social need, to be around other people. And when you're around other people, usually you want to you want to connect. You need to connect. The only way you don't connect is if you buy into the label that you're assigned. It just goes back to the idea of being one of the only in terms of culture and race in your organization. I've been that as a student in school, as
Yeah. Right.
going to really, and then in my career, I've been the only in leadership for some time.
Yeah.
And I will say this, that unlocking yourself, not that you don't recognize the impact that race, culture, and all those things have, but unlocking yourself for those labels and seeing yourself as and focus on your spirit, focus on who you are as long as you're in your soul. Then you're able to connect, because everyone has, and we're all really insignificant and significant at the same time. That we're pretty much a speck. You heard the effect of the astronauts that go out into space to see the entire world or the Earth from that perspective, and when they come back, you don't see the boundaries, you don't see all these things, and when you stop latching on to the labels that are assigned, if you continue to peel those layers off, when you come back to your place as one of the only, you're able to connect. And I'll give you an example of this too, is that right after the death of George Floyd, I had an opportunity on my heart to speak about that, and posted a video. And it wasn't actually, it was just it was going to be just a video for friends on my Facebook page, and it ended up resonating with a lot of people, and it went far beyond, and it was shared. And I ended up having an opportunity to go speak at our township, and this where I work, with the local police department, and go to roll call. Now, if I went in there and not remember, I talked about understanding people's stories and what they may be telling themselves. If I went in there with judgment among, and I'm the only in the room with a 20 or so white officers who are in a very tough spot in a highly pressurized situation, then I don't think the messaging would have been heard. We wouldn't be able to have a conversation. But instead, because I'm able to go in and look, is there the idea of, I know in the book Stamped, the author talks about the idea of uplift suasion, where being almost quote unquote the safe Negro and being considered not intimidating. That could that be there, but that wasn't being considered in our time. The idea was I had a platform, I had an opportunity on multiple occasions to sit down with police officers and different people in law enforcement to have that conversation during some pretty tough times. But it was the fact that unlocking those labels from who they are and who I am, and coming down to our very core as a need to be human. That was what allowed the communication to occur and begin the conversation. And even if it was impacted one person that wasn't going to go harm a human being on their during their duty that day, then that's the difference that we have an opportunity to make.
Yeah. I think as you're talking about that, I think too, you were the right person to do that because again, through your own experiences of being vulnerable and learning and the mistakes that you've made and having people tell you that, look, you should have done this instead of that. And, just your growth, as I understand it to be in leadership, I think that probably gave you an extra measure as well of grace, understanding that these officers also, this was their opportunity to learn and their opportunity to grow and self-reflect through the words that, you were speaking. So I just think it's amazing how, that kind of opportunity came about as I think about all the stuff that you had to go through yourself in terms of growth to become a great leader. And now you have the opportunity to help these guys. So.
Yeah, I think in terms of also being a school leader, schools are the hub of the community, especially in Delaware County, where like neighborhood schools are a big deal. So we have an opportunity to engage the community, engage the parents, because if we engage and work together as the adults, when the adults are doing well, the children do well. If you provide the messaging and connect to the adults, then they'll adjust and work with their children. And every parent that I've interacted with knows or may have even heard that it's not my job to have anyone ever defend their parenting. We never want anyone in that role, in that position. When I talk to parent, even the most difficult times, I may laugh through it because I realize that even the decision I may make may not be the right decision, the most perfect decision. We're also trying to figure it out. I'm just grateful and having the gratitude that I have the trust of that community and the favor that they trust to send their children every day to be served. And then ultimately we work together on this journey. And I use the word journey all the time because that's where we're on. And it just shows that, like, go back to being brave, not perfect, that we don't have this figured out. And if we figure it out together, and if they trust, if we're operating at the speed of trust, that's Ben Bergeron mentions that on Chasing Excellence, that we then we're able to work together and do things we never thought possible.
Yeah. I want to say shout out to our Ridley High School family. I know that I'm excited to. I know at one point you worked at Ridley. Is that correct?
Yes, I was there for
And
3
so
years.
to see Jabari go back to where we came from, I was just like, yeah. And to have that experience. Before we go into commercial, I had a question. So I have a school age child. I also have a teenage son. How are we to go about teaching our children leadership and to adding value? I feel like they are on a totally different level when it comes to that. They're like, yeah, you know, especially my 18-year-old. What advice would you give to parents on advising their kids on how to be a leader and to add value to their community, school, family, and so forth?
Living your values, the values you talk about, living those core values. The question I have for families or parents: can your child identify what the core values of your family or the top 3 core values, and then putting them in a position to live out those values? So, if we value human connection and supporting humans, then are we having are we going to can we help out at a soup kitchen? It's not dangerous, but it's by serving meals. Can we help out with collecting? I mean, there's plenty of opportunities of service learning opportunities that we could be involved in. As far as children goes, again, putting yourself in a position where paying close attention to who they are, speaking to their hearts. Do you know your children? Well, sometimes we believe we take our children for granted. We kind of, it's interesting. We want to provide a great life for our children, right? We want to give them what we didn't have. Not, I mean, again, can it be spoiled sometimes? Of course. But at the same time, we want to give them what they have. But then sometimes we punish them for not having to face the same adversity that we have.
Yeah.
Like we take for granted, what you got to complain on? You got a roof over your head, clothes on your back. You have what I didn't have. Well, that's not their fault.
Right.
And we shouldn't allow that to block us from understanding who they are. Because if we listen to their hearts, they want to do the right thing. They really don't want to disappoint. If we listen to them enough, we'll find out what their interests are, and then we can align their interests with service. Like my daughter is an artist. She loves art. She produces art, and it's the opportunity for service would be having her paint canvases to deliver to a senior center for people who are shut in, so they can find some joy, find some brightness in their day, or writing letters, or sending out your child to go shovel your neighbor's driveway or snow or carry. So all those things are still there. Teaching manners to your child, all those things are still there, but teach your child to respect every single human being, regardless of who we are, and not developing some kind of hierarchy or believing that we've made it. I know Maslow's hierarchy has had this, everything's looked at some kind of ladder where you just reach a certain point.
Yeah.
And it really should be like some kind of oil. I mean, instead of a hierarchy, it should be really some kind of like oil slick hill made out of ice because it's like you're constantly slipping and trying to get back up. And I think that would serve a greater benefit. And with our children, we have opportunity. We just have to pay attention to when those opportunities are available and live in those lives because they're watching.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love that. I love that. It just made, when you said that, I was thinking, you know what? Cass loves to sing. Maybe I'll have her go to a nursing home and sing. I never even give it any thought, to even to do anything like that. That is awesome. Kendra, did you have another question before we go off?
No, I think we can go to commercial break.
Okay, we are gonna go to commercial break, and we'll come back. And Jabari, we will ask you, Dr. Jabari Whitehead, if you could leave our community with some a positive thought or something that's on your heart. But we're first going to go to commercial break. And that is our A game. It is a male supplement that we have available, and you can hook up with Charles. I was going to call Dr. Charles Brakely.
They might be the doctor after this.
It sounds good.
I know, right? He's gonna be the doctor after giving out all these supplements. But they are available. Make sure you to give him a call or also send us a message. And we have 2 or 3. They are flying off the shelves. They are literally flying off the shelves.
They do. I have 2 or 3, but literally.
Like literally. I don't think he has 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But Dr. Jabari Whitehead, I'm so grateful to have you here, and I can talk to you for hours. Like just
speaking of unpacking, like I want to like unpack your whole brain. Like I'm like, what? I'm already thinking about next topic. That hopefully
it's so hard. It's so hard to kind of like, and I had questions already set aside, but then I have more questions on top of that as well. But before we head out, I'd just like to ask you to leave something special for our community that's from your heart, advice, whatever's on your heart, if you can share that with us.
So we've all been going through this road of uncertainty uncertainty for some time. Like we talked about unlearning, learning, and how there's no deadline to this life and outside of the ultimate one. But there's been like I learned about six. I thought about six pieces, six pillars, six. They're not even steps, but they're. I think about these six pieces that have carried me through,
Yeah.
and I think I came up with the acronym FACTOR, and I'll walk you through these. So the F in FACTOR, so FACTOR, the F in FACTOR stands for freedom from your past, because getting that freedom from your past, the idea of like who you were, and not being held to your former self, and which I'm very happy I didn't grow up in the age of cell phones, so and being able to be free from your past, because again, Lord knows I wasn't perfect, and I'm still not. And then the A in FACTOR, it stands for acceptance of yourself, because once you get that freedom from your past, accepting who you are, that radical self love. C is connection, human connection, our need to connect to other humans, our need to have allies and mentors, and deepen relationships that we have, those relationships that matter. The T is the truth. Do we face the truth about ourselves? Sometimes we are quick to criticize and judge other people, and we're in this place about I'm here to speak my truth. Well, when speaking truth is really about speaking about yourself. It's not about criticism. It's not about that, the sarcasm. Sarcasm actually learned means to tear flesh, as the root word. So again, it's not about criticizing others. The O is about optimism. I was raised by a mother who has unbridled, irrational optimism to overcome. My mother was famous for finding the one example. Have you ever seen the movie Baps?
No,
It was Halle Berry's old movie with Halle Berry. It was Baps. Check it out. Basically, it's about these women who end up becoming rich, had this dream, and it's my Black American princesses, I think is what it is. But my mother found one example and argued with you that something in the movie could happen, but it's about putting in the work. You can be optimistic when you put in the work, when you've done the preparation. And then the R is resilience, because it doesn't stop. You're waking up every single day slaying this dragon. Last year's work has nothing to do with this year's schedule. It doesn't. What you did. Like if I worked out this morning, it has nothing to do with today. It's not over. It means that what is next. And my father and my parents always look for, no matter what I've achieved in life, is like what's next. So FACTOR again is just unlocking yourself from your past, your freedom, accepting yourself for that radical self love, connecting with those who love you, who breathe energy and life into your heart, into your spirit, speaking your truth, but really taking doing that inner work by yourself, being optimistic, because if you gain some perspective, bad things can always be worse, and then resilience, knowing that in the end, it's about showing up every day to be the best version of yourself, dying to yourself every day, and living the life so you can add value to others that you interact with.
I love that. Guess what my journal entry is going to be tonight?
I know. And it's funny, I was gonna ask what's your top books or resources that you think people should tap into, but I want to leave it right where you left it with the FACTOR.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's powerful, and we got to repeat that.
I love that. I'll make sure I put that inside the actual posting here so everybody can get a hope, because that's something that you could write down and look at every day. Am I in this space? I love that.
We have kids walk through it too.
Yeah, we can't go yet because we have 4 more comments.
Then we'll end. Yeah.
I'll be more than happy to come back and go through each one of those.
Oh yeah, of course, you are always welcome. Charles Baker says Izzy sounded like Rick Ross. I'm a boss. Don't make me rap. I'm gonna embarrass my whole family.
No.
Tamara, hi, Tamara Lolly. She says, thank you for tuning in. Fatima West says, oh my goodness, the seniors love the children. I used to take my as Angel and her Girl Scout troop to senior centers all the time. They read books to seniors, trick or treated, serve meals on holidays. It is a great place to introduce children. Yes, Fatima, I didn't think about that. Like, I'm excited about this idea. I've learned so much from this hour that we've been in this conversation. Yeah. Charles Baker says, I see you have 2 jokes. I got 2 jokes. And Gaston Branch, hi, thank you for tuning in.
Hi, Jenny.
She says, I missed what was flying off the shelves. Oh, we will tell you. I'm a new listener looking for encouragement for my great grandson who is 16 and on a rough side of the mountain.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, I would encourage you to look at this podcast with him, as well as our podcast from last week. It was another very dynamic speaker. And so I think between those 2 podcasts, if you get your son plugged in, and even, just to have this conversation with him, and Dr. Jabari set up the beginning about the 3 things, that you love about yourself. I think even starting the conversation there with your great grandson might be something that is very powerful.
Yeah.
And being working at the high school level, 16 is a tough age.
Yeah.
It's a lot of external validation and voices that he's battling against and trying to figure out. And I think part of it too is helping him understand that he doesn't have to know it all already. Yeah. The brain doesn't form. The executive functioning in the brain doesn't really form until ages 25 to 27 years of age. So essentially, we're asking children what they want to be or who they are, locking themselves into an identity long before they have the capacity to do so biologically and scientifically.
Wow. Yeah. And Annie, what I'll do, because we had a guest on, and Mikkel, I believe his name was. He was a young entrepreneur. We'll send that over to you. I'll send you a personal message, and that could be an inspiration as well.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Charles Berkeley says, I wrote that down. Factors. Yes. Nice. I cannot wait. I'm excited. Jabari, you know that we tell everyone, once you are a part of our family, you're always going to be a part of our family. Yeah. This platform is open to you. Anytime you want to come on, you just message us and let us know. It doesn't have to be something that we initiate. You can just call us up and say, hey, I want to talk about this. I think that this needs to get out into the universe, and we are on it. So don't even hesitate to ask. Annie Gaston Branch says, thank you. Blessings. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So everyone here knows that we are here 7 days a week. We have something for everyone every single day of the week. And so if you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at Feel Good Talk, Facebook at Feel Good Talk, YouTube at FGT Mind, Body, Soul, and Business. We're also on Instagram at feel.goodtalk. And you can email us at feelgoodtalk113@gmail.com. And our website is www.feelgoodtalk.net. We also have merch on that website. And so if you're interested and you purchase merch, please send us a picture, tag us in it. And I also want to say that we have ventured off into Reels. We are in the Reels world. So you can check out some of our Reels. Some of them may be playbacks or just videos. And also our stories section has recaps on our page as well as what we're going to have throughout the week. And so, Jabari, we are grateful that you have come and shared this space.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And you have to make this heart because I try every week.
Right, I've been trying for over a year to make a heart with her.
It just
not having time off. So, all right, you and Izzy are on the same page with your heart.
Don't hate.
We love you.